Welcome to the Feed Central Hay Matters podcast, your go-to source for all things hay-related in Australia. I'm your host, John Paul Driver. In today's episode, we're joined again by Dave Clothier, National Sales Manager at Feed Central. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much, JP. Good to be on board again.
Let's talk through a market update. What are you seeing, supply and demand? What are the big drivers out there?
Well, I suppose we've got to really start with the state of play across this great continent of Australia. We are a country of extremes, and we're certainly experiencing that from north to south, east to west. The continued warmer temperatures and higher rainfall, as high as 30% above average rainfall over the last few months across Queensland and New South Wales, and the top end really, has continued to see pasture growth continue, which is putting a reasonable feed supply in front of graziers in that neck of the woods. As we move further south, we move into Victoria and Tasmania. They're certainly drying off. Victoria in the north and the west particularly. Tasmania's drying off, and then we move across into South Australia. It's getting drier as we get through this period. And Western Australia is in considerable drought, so much so that supply or demand is very high in WA, and there's a lot of livestock moving across to the eastern seaboard just through necessity. It is quite a set of extremes at the moment.
Livestock moving from WA across?
Just because of the drought conditions, like they've got very little opportunity to... Very short supply of fodder and fairly high prices over there. So they're considering their options rather than feeding their moving stock east, which has happened before. It's nothing new, providing a way forward for them.
What are the implications here of all of these extremes?
Well, look, it's all positive, absolutely. Like the herd is at its highest since 2014, where the majority of the cattle are in Australia, which is in Northern Australia, Queensland, the Northern Territory. Extremely good conditions, high volumes of feed, large numbers of cattle that will continue to flow into the southern markets going forward. So that's really good from a livestock perspective. The export job is looking very positive. It's increasing across the globe, even into the States. It's considerably higher due to your lowest herd number for, I think, 70-odd years from what I read, JP.
Yeah.
So that's creating opportunities there for the Australian beef sector, as it is across Asia.
Oh, we're not going to tell the American cattlemen about this. They are
but
not pleased.
It's certainly very positive.
They are not pleased.
Yeah, it's certainly positive for the next couple of years, for sure. I think prices continue to be very solid. That's just because of the warmer temperatures. The body of feed that's around will continue to create the demand from restockers across the grazier network. You know, feedlots are still very strong, very profitable in Australia. The majority are either full or close to capacity. There's still a lot of growth in that sector as an expansion still happening. I'm on a bit of a tour at the moment. The Northwest Slopes in New South Wales. Lots of conversations about expansion and so forth. Augurs very well for the industry, without doubt. If in general terms, the rainfall pattern, I read something yesterday where it's about 20% or 19% above average as a national number, 30% in the north and obviously lower in other parts in those southern states. But overall, it's very good. There's talk of higher temperatures through to the end of July, which will continue to see pasture growth for a little while yet, which gives graziers security. Weaning has either happened or happening across the country as we speak now. That augurs very well for demand in the fodder industry. So all that is only positive news to me.
I want to juxtapose here for just a second where you were talking about very low cattle numbers in the U.S. I just wrote a report talking about how we're down 272,000 fewer cows, and mama cows, in the northwest part of the U.S., well, just call it kind of the western U.S., which for us, we're feeding 1 or 2 tons per head per year. That works out to somewhere in the neighborhood of 500,000 tons of demand destruction for our hay. So this is almost a completely opposite story that I hear you're telling me. You're restocking, and there will be demand for hay down the line.
Demand has lifted considerably, I'd say, over the last 3 to 4 weeks. And that's because of the history of Australia. Like we understand that traditionally Anzac Day is the day that the frosts start on the eastern seaboard particularly. That hasn't happened to a large extent. It has happened in some small areas of southern New South Wales or southeast New South Wales. But it's certainly an expectation of graziers that it's getting cooler as we go forward. People are starting to prepare for their fodder needs now, knowing that it's going to get colder and their pastures will be compromised. So there's lots of those conversations happening at the moment. It's starting to feel like the clients we're talking to now have done more research than they probably have in the past. They're asking for feed test results. They're having discussions with our account managers on a one-on-one basis about what their needs are or what their requirements are for their operation, whether they're weeding or feeding dry cows or whatever they're doing. And they're making a lot more informed decisions, which is really a positive thing for the industry as far as we're concerned, because it just means we're supplying the right product for the right needs, so to speak. But it's right across all grades of hay. That's the other interesting thing at the moment. It's all grades, whether they're using it as a supplement in a mix, where they can use a lesser product, or they're just feeding a weaner type product where they're looking for that new season hay, really good aroma, and low NDF and all the things that attract animals to the bunk type scenario or to the hay rack, depending on their requirements. You talk from a supply perspective, there's still great volumes of product across all grades, and all grades are selling at the moment, which is good to see, because there is older season product, particularly down in the south and Victoria in particular, and that's starting to move. None of that has moved for considerable time, so that's a really positive thing to see. The conversations we're having with a lot of clients now, it's about forward contracts. They know it's going to get colder. They know they're going to need fodder. So they're starting to look now, because they're all starting to appreciate that the volumes of quality hay are slipping further south. So as it slips further south, the freight component increases. So, a lot of people are even starting to think about end of financial year and the impact it has on their business, and whether they should be forward contracting quality hay at today's prices rather than waiting until it's further and further away from them, which will increase the delivered price. So they're really healthy conversations, I think, and the smarter customers are doing that as we speak now. Through our web sales platform, like that last 3 to 4 weeks, there is a lot of inquiry coming through, particularly out of those drier areas in Victoria I was just talking about, and South Australia, those areas in particular, which is great to see, because that's where the volume of hay is. It hasn't got to travel as far. It all just augurs very well for that part of the world. And in the north, it's really about the weaning process at the moment. So that's where we're trying to have the conversations about just sourcing the best hay we can, as close as we can to where it's needed, to make it more affordable.
Now, what kind of price movement are we seeing? The demand is picked up. There's more inquiries. That generally leads to some sort of price movement. Are we seeing it yet? Is it there? Or are we still talking about freight differentials?
There's a few ways to answer that question, JP. If we think about the south, like there is still a lot of those compromised paddock stack articles down there that traditionally aren't moving north because of the quality and so forth. But a lot of those over the fence type sales, and people are wanting to move the product, so that there is very negotiable conversations going on in those types of scenarios.
Ample supply of low quality hay, just trying to clear the market.
Yeah.
But that's not going to create much of a price bump on the low end.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, particularly those outside stacks, they want them gone. So the negotiation around those is pretty strong at the moment, as you would expect. If we think about the shedded product, like the majority of farmers in Australia are reasonably affluent over the last few years. And the price is totally determined on the need for cash flow from those growers. If they don't need the cash at the moment, they're sitting on their prices and they're not budging. They're waiting just to see what happens with the market in the next couple of months. The growers that are looking to clear their sheds and create some shed space now are getting a little bit nervous. They're negotiating, as is the freight industry for that matter. A lot of trucks sitting idle, so there are negotiations both sides going on every day in the right direction. Probably, if we cast our mind back to the Christmas period, December, we sort of started to see a slide in prices, probably $60 to $80 a tonne on cereal hay, like new season cereal hay. And that did come into effect, and it absolutely did. But as the product became further and further away, that advantage has been lost through the freight component having to travel further. Delivered prices, as a general statement, are probably very similar to where they were through that summer period today.
Very interesting. So we're still talking about freight differentials and the buyers paying the same price, but where the hay is coming from is making the difference.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. There's very little shedded hay with good access north of Dubbo, and very little in that central New South Wales area. You've nearly got to travel closer to the border in southern New South Wales before there's any great volumes of quality hay. Mm-hmm. Oh, look, I think the smart move now, if I was looking for fodder for my own enterprise, I'd be starting to think about what my options were for my own business, whether I needed to, start thinking about the end of financial year. We're only 9-10 weeks away from that period, which is amazing. Coming around very quickly, I can secure my needs at the market price today, drawing quality product from as close as I can to the destination. So I'd be looking now. There's certainly no need to panic at all. There's plenty of volume out there. I'm just thinking that people who are after quality hay should be starting to look now and looking for the right product that suits their needs and securing it for a period when they need it. May be able to discuss deferred payment terms and things. We don't have to lock today and pay today unnecessarily. We can do it a lot smarter than that.
From the grower's standpoint, is if you need to generate cash flow, maybe you have some ability to today because there's a little liquidity in the market.
Yeah. You're spot on, JP. It's really about just matching one with the other. We still haven't seen that cold weather come in that we traditionally see by now, but we all know it's coming. Just when. We'd expect through that eastern New South Wales and southern Queensland area particularly, where those pastures get compromised more, all those graziers know that it's coming. It's just a matter of when. If we're going to wait another month to secure our needs, just be prepared that it may be further away than it is today to source that product, which has an impact on delivered price, of course.
Dave, thank you. It's been a pleasure. And again, we've been joined by Dave Clothier, National Sales Manager at Feed Central. Thank you again for your thoughts.
Thanks very much, JP. Appreciated the time with you.